Good morning and welcome to training. Marlene is going to go ahead and introduce me. I forgot. So welcome to training. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you so much, everyone who can join now or later use our recorded session. We are actually launching series Use What You Own in GP, and we are lucky to have Amber, the best trainer in the GP industry, to actually participate and teach you how to use functionality in GP that you own and are not using properly today. Also, for all the new clients, we offer free high-level system review. So please contact us via our website or call me at 312-801-5070. Thank you, and please go back to Amber.
Well, thank you so much, Marlene, and welcome everybody to training. As Marlene said, we are going to be covering a feature that's, I'm just going to go ahead and hit that. We're covering a feature that's part of GP that's included with no additional purchase. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my slides and show you what we're talking about. So today we're going to be talking about SmartList Designer. Now, as we start this session, I want to be clear, there's two tools that are available for designing or creating your own smart lists. One is called SmartList Builder, and the other one is called SmartList Designer. So this is who I am, different picture of me. I've been doing GP now for over 20 years. I love working with the product, and what I like to do is help people learn how to get the most out of what they have. And then sometimes you might decide to add on. So I work with you to show you what tools really integrate well with GP. So we did a session before. I'll talk about that in a bit about Builder, but today is going to be about Designer. So let me just explain the difference. SmartList Designer is free and it's included with Microsoft Dynamics GP. So it's a free part of GP. It's automatically there. If you have SmartList Builder, it actually takes over, and that's what you'll be seeing when you try to do report design. I included some of the slides in today's session that we included in another free 1-hour session we did several months ago that was all about, I'm just going to hit this. It was all about using SmartList Designer versus Builder. So if you are interested in what are the differences as we finish, I highly recommend you watch that webinar. So I will be kind of mentioning those because we'll hit into some of those differences pretty quickly when we're in Designer. And I'll tell you why I recommend using Builder for a lot of people. Actually, wish everybody had it because it does a lot of really cool things. But today we're talking about using what you own. So if you don't have Builder or you aren't planning to purchase it, we can still do a lot of really, really cool different reports using SmartList Designer. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. If you are interested in this webinar, you can go on to our website, onto Dexpro Dynamics, and under training, there's a link to the 1-hour trainings. And all of the old 1-hour trainings that we've done, there's a way, if you just register, it's going to send you a link to watch this older one, even though, because today we're not talking so much about Builder. Okay. When you build a report in SmartList Designer, you have the option to use either tables or views in GP or in SmartList Designer to pull data. So a table is directly stored in your server. So for example, if I create a brand new customer, that's going to create a record on the RM customer master table. So it's going to create a record there. Anytime I create a new customer, it's in there. When I create a sales transaction, which we'll show you later what it looks like when you go directly to tables, those can go into multiple tables. So if I create, for example, a credit memo for a customer, that's going to be on the unposted table or work table for the transaction. It's also going to have information on the customer master. It's also going to maybe have information you want over on the other tables for shipping method. I mean, there could be a lot of different tables, But when you're looking on the table, if you want to include things from other tables, you can either connect every single table. So you could say, this field connects to this field, you're building. Or what is available through SQL, this is not just a strictly GP thing, is that you have the option to also build reports based on what are called views. So what a SQL view does is a SQL view will actually take the information of, like we were saying, the customer master. So that's going to have the ID and the name and the address and all of that. It's going to take that and all the information from that credit memo and connect those for you. So you don't have to do all the funky connections. My recommendation, you're going to see it pretty quickly, is that complicated reports, like based on transactions, I typically do that based on views. If it's something, you'll see there's sometimes that I can do them right on tables, and it's pretty easy. And I'll show you those differences real quick. So don't worry about trying to figure that out now, but just know that there's some things that can be based on tables and some can be based on views, and you can combine them. That will affect some of your options later on when it comes to making them live Excel. And we'll get to that in just a bit. So like we mentioned, today we're talking about SmartList. I know a couple you just joined. SmartList Designer. We're not going into Builder. If you do have Builder and you want to watch today, you're more than welcome. I would never recommend someone who has Builder go back and use Designer, because you're going to have a lot more flexibility and functionality in Builder. So if you have Builder, use Builder. If you have Designer and it fits everything you need to do, you're good to go. Don't worry about it. You're great. But if you run into things that you wish it could do, you're going to see that in this other webinar that I mentioned, that Builder has extra functionality, but it is extra cost. So that's something to keep in mind, like balance those out if it's a good investment for your team. Okay, so tables inside of GP. This is not the GP table structure, but just to show you how things connect based on key fields on the data. So if you're trying to build a report and you have to build it based on tables, you're going to be doing a lot of connections. When I first started to do custom SmartList reports years ago, I would go and I'd have to figure out all these table connections. Now that I can use views, I very rarely will build a report directly based on tables, because it takes a lot of work to make those connections work correctly, and it's a lot of extra work. So we're going to get into views in just a second. But like I mentioned, there's some real easy reports I do all the time just on tables. One thing to note is that in GP, there's going to be multiple table types. So like on a sales transaction or a purchase order, if you have line items, there's going to be a header. That's going to be things like the customer, the vendor, the document date. All those are headers. And then the header also includes what we would call a footer. So it's going to be the totals, things like that. The line detail on sales and purchasing transactions are going to be things like they ordered 15 widgets and those cost $15 each, or $10 each, so it's $150. That's going to be the line detail. So there's header and there's line. No matter what module you're in, there's going to also be work tables, open tables, and history. So if you said to me, I need to see all the transactions for these customers, I would need to include things that are on the work, which means saved but not posted, the posted table, which is going to be the open table, and the history table. Sales is a little funky, and today's not an AR training, but in sales, they have to get pushed to history manually. In purchasing, they get pushed to history automatically. GL, they get pushed to history when you close. Things like, there's different things like that. If you are looking at information, you want to learn something about what tables are which and what are the names. If you're directly in SQL, they're going to use letters and numbers to represent the table. So you can see that on my screen here. PM00200 is the vendor master. If you don't remember that, definitely bookmark victoriauden.com. And that's going to tell you a lot of those commonly used tables for payables, receivables, purchasing, things like that. Sales orders, it's going to give you those table names. So they also give you, oops, I didn't mean to scroll down. It also gives you the values, and you're going to see that when I build a report on a table in a bit. Okay. I'll be honest, I haven't used Dyn Developer, but I had a few people recommend it, so I included in the slides. You're welcome to take a look at that website as well. They also give tables that are in GP as well. You can also use add-ons. I included GP Power Tools. That's an add-on product. Rockton has a tool as well that includes table information. If you're using Designer, there's also ways to get to tables. So if you have some third-party products, GP Power Tools, Rockton Toolbox, and E1 SmartList Builder all include like wizards or things that tell you what tables are included. Inside of GP, you can also figure out the tables if you're in a window. It's not my favorite way, I'll be quite honest, because it's a little bit confusing. But if I go into a window, you don't have to be in that specific window, but it helps if you pull up the window and I go into tools. Now I happen to have Table Finder from SmartList Builder included, and I have things from Power Tools included because I have those loaded. But we're going to go to resource and descriptions. That's the what's included. And I can come in and go to tables and it'll load all my tables. And let's see. And then I have to search. So this is why I said it's not my favorite, but you can search and find your table. And then it'll tell you what fields are in here and all kinds of stuff like that. Again, it's not my favorite one, but it is available if you're trying to find tables. Okay, so let's keep on going. Now we're going to create and do a demo of showing you some of the ones that I use all the time. If someone only has SmartList Designer, I do use SmartList Designer for one of the other ones I'll include on here, which I can add to the slides, but you'll see it in the demo, is I also do it for unposted payables checks. So I use it a lot for bank rec list, so user security and payables. For time, we're going to see how we're doing. We've got about 45 minutes left in today's session. So I'll be able to show you quite a few reports. So I'm going to show you first user security, some bank rec and payables. So let's go back into GP. Now I happen to have SmartList Designer installed, but before we connected today, I disabled it. So when I hit new, when I do things in here, I'm going to be launching Designer. If you hit new and it opens something that says SmartList Builder across, again, we do SmartList Builder full day trainings or half day trainings through Dexpro. Email Haley, email Marlena, email me, or just message off our website, of the Dexpro Dynamics website, and we'll get you information on the next full builder training we're doing. Okay, so one wacky thing to know about Builder or Designer is that if you happen to have a list up and you hit new, it's going to think you want to include all that data that you have up in the report. See what happens if I hit new? Just going to hit that. And it thinks that I want to include all of that information from here. So it's saying you're going to start with what you already have up. I don't want to do that. We're going to do a user security report. So I'm just going to click on the word company, not one of the subfolders that I have on any of my smart lists. So if I wanted to do a new GL one and I didn't want what was in the built-in reports, I would start here on financial. If I wanted to make just a new report based on the same information in account transactions, I could just hit new and it would start with that same base. So it's a copy of it, but I want it to be blank. So I'm going to hit on company and my screen is blank and I'm going to hit new. I could also do this under, let's see if we have a system. I don't remember. Yeah, we have a system. User security should probably be under system. And I can just change that up here since I haven't added anything. And oh, you know what? I have to click it out there. We'll leave it on company for right now. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go user security. Now you'll notice that I like to put a little asterisk or underscore at the beginning And that's so that I know that it's from SmartList Designer. You may want to also put SLD at the end, something so people know what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and hit user security, hit my plus, and then it's going to be under system and I have to wait. This is the part that takes the longest. So as I'm watching our clock today, when we get to things coming up with adding tables, adding views, it's the slowest part is opening this up. It's just, it is what it is. So it's coming in, it's loading that list of tables, it's loading that list of information. So we're going to go ahead and get that added in. And you just have to tell your computer, I believe in you. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is scroll down. And I want to see security user, we'll see user role. I'm going to see, I think this is the one that I want. So let's go ahead and plus this. Perfect. This is the exact table that I want to build this on. This is going to tell me my company ID. That's not the same as company name. I may want to see that. So I'm going to say user ID, security ID, and company ID. And I did that in a specific order. I talk about that on another slide, but you'll see that now I've got my companies in there, and mine is just the test company. And I've got my user and I've got my security role. I may want to go ahead and include my company master. Let's see if that's in here. And I want to put the company name, but it won't just show the name. I have to now connect them. If I went ahead and click OK, I have to connect those tables. So I'm going to say in the security assignment, that's the table with the most data. That's the main table that my report's based on. I'm going to connect the company ID to the company master company ID. Now you notice I didn't say, I said left join, and what that's going to do is that first table is if there's something there and it's not on that second table, I'll still see it, but the field will be blank. If I said inner join, what it's going to do is if it's not on both tables, it won't come up. So I'm going to go ahead and do left join and hit execute, and we're going to click OK. Now, the reason I will do this when I'm at customers is I'm looking for what people are assigned to. And this is, you can get this report out of GP as a printed report, but I may want it in Excel. I may want to do a filtered report. So this is just a quick way to see who has what security role or roles in the system. You'll see some users have multiple roles, and it makes it very easy for me to see that if I'm looking at it in SmartList Designer, or if you wanted it, you could do that same report in Builder. You would have more features options as well. Okay, so we've got that first report down, and I'm going to do bank rec details. One of the things that's very frustrating to me in GP is if you've ever tried to reprint a posting from doing a bank rec. If you come in here and say bank posting journals, and I want to reprint a reconcile or clear what cleared on a specific, let's see, clear transactions from one of my specific bank reconciliations, I have to know, it won't let me go by checkbook and date. I have to know the audit trail code. If I click on the lookup, this, oh, I guess I don't have any on here. Well, that doesn't really help. I guess I haven't reconciled any. If I went into there and I don't want to do a bank rec. Well, if I went into there, I'll show you the table. I don't have information. I've been doing this all week for my one of my other customers. So I'm going to show you what I do for this, even though you'll have to use your imagination because I don't have one done. So we're going to hit new. Notice I went back to financial, so I have a good clean slate. I'm going to hit the plus again, the plus again, the plus again. And then when that opens, I'll show you the table we need to get. And just again, to remind you, we are recording today's session. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'll make sure that I have the chat in my other window in case you guys say, wait, you can go back to that, or what would you do in this? I'll be able to see that. Okay, so I'm going to come into here and we'll go CM and we'll say, okay. So if we went to the reconcile header, you would be able to see the checkbook ID, the statement date, the statement balance, and then you'll be able to also see the audit trail code. That's the one you really want. Now, again, mine's not going to be that exciting unless I do a quick bank rec. So we're going to go bank rec list. Even if I execute it, oh wait, I have one. Okay, I guess I never finished it. I started one. That's why it's not done, but I can see I've got one started. And I'd be able to, once I finish that one, we'll be able to see the audit trail code in there. So that helps you do the reprints. And you can also see the balance. So that's been really helpful. I have a customer who had all kinds of crazy stuff going on with checkbook being out of balance with the GL. And I was able to get the list of when they did statements. And then I used the inquiry for checkbook balance and figured out the month that it went all kinds of weird. And we found people were doing transactions without hitting the GL. They were going in and out of cash. They were doing all kinds of wacky stuff. And I was able to do this without having to manually write down those balances. They have a lot of checkbooks and high balances. With it would have been much more difficult to get that if I didn't have this report. Okay. The other one that I use all the time, and I think I already have this one listed, which is here. This is unposted AP payments in SmartList Designer. Right now, we don't have any, but I'm going to create one and show you what it looks like. Create a real quick payables, and we'll just do a quick batch. Call it Dexpro, just so you can see the one we did today. And I'll go ahead and say save. So I'm just going to pick a few people. Oops, that's okay. I'm going to delete this when we're all done with training today or with the session. I just want you to see if I select a bunch. Okay. Now I could come in and print and I can get my edit list. Let's take a look at my edit list. I don't care about the exemption report right now. And you're going to see that we have 14 pages. Each page is almost a third to a half a page, depending on what you've selected per vendor. And it's kind of difficult. You have to read through all of this. And if someone just wants to know, who are we paying? How much are we paying? I'm going to do that in SmartList Designer. So watch what happens when I refresh this. So I go from 14 pages to a quick screenshot. I can view this. I can see all of this in here and see the ones that, might want to take a look at. So that's using SmartList Designer to get an unposted payments report. Now, the way that I did that, I'm just going to hit modify because I want you guys to see what I did. I used the table called PM payment work. When I go into here and I go to my tables, under purchasing, there's a table called PM payment work. And I just selected, I'm going to see if I can drag this down a little bit. Okay, I'll go up and show you. If you pause this in the recording, you'll be able to kind of follow this. You would add the batch number, the checkbook, the document date, the payment number, vendor ID, vendor name, vendor check name, just in case those are different, I'll be able to catch those, and the check total. So under my tables, I just went to purchasing and hit plus, and we'll find PM payment work. And then I would be able to add those. I didn't have to do any relationship. It was all inclusive in that one table, which was actually why it's such a handy one to create very quickly. If you don't have that one created, like I said, if you walk away from today, this is one of those ones that'll take 2 minutes to create. It's very easy to see. And you can see I just checked those boxes in that report. There's other things I can add, but those were the things that were what I wanted on my edit list. Go ahead and close this, and we'll discard changes. Okay. If we did this one already If you're including two tables, so when I did the demo, we did this already. I'm not going to do it twice just for time reasons. If I said I was doing like that user security and the system stores that as the company ID, not the company name, I had to connect those tables. If you are doing a report for receivables or payables transactions, they don't store the vendor name on the transaction, they'll just store the ID. So you have to connect the customer number or the vendor number to the transaction table. Now, as I mentioned, if I was doing this report that you can see in the screen here, if I was doing this report, I would only be seeing posted receivables that hadn't been moved to history, hadn't been fully applied and moved to history. If I want to see a list of everything for that customer, it's going to be much easier to do that based on a view. And I'll show you that coming up. Okay. One thing to notice or to note about SmartList Designer, let me go back over here and show you. If I come in here and I hit modify, and I go, you know what, I would rather have the vendor names up at the top. There's not a right click reorder. This doesn't reorder. This just lets me come in and put calculated fields. I can't reorder without literally reopening it back down to the table or view I selected from, unchecking the ones below it, moving it around, and then reselecting them. That's one of the things that makes me frustrated in Designer, but is very easy to fix in Builder. So just if that starts to bug you, just know that's a thing that's fixed in Builder, not in Designer. Okay. Is reordering. So with that in mind, I will sometimes, if I wanted to have the customer name, I would literally only select customer number from the transaction table. Very quickly, I'd go and connect the customer master, add the customer name and any other fields I want, and I can go back and forth. So sometimes I'm going between 3 different tables to get the right order. Whereas in Builder, I can just add the tables and then worry about ordering later. You have to be meticulous on your order when you're adding your checkboxes. Just be careful in there. Okay. So next, as I mentioned before, we can do SQL views for SmartList Designer. So what a SQL view is, it's a virtual table is the definition of what it really is. But what this means is that information that's on multiple tables of GP data, or even we can include external data. What I tell people all the time is, if you're running this report and it becomes key and you cannot figure it out in Designer, call Dexpro. They can probably get someone to build you a view, and then they're going to give you a couple options. What I think of as first tier of reporting is SmartList. That's a report that's like, I can run in, I can filter, I can export it. I've got my report. But is it the fastest way to do a report long-term? No. Next tier would be, can I take that same data and make it into a live Excel report, which you can do with Designer and you can do with Builder. You can actually publish those out so that they're live reports. That's going to pull data faster, and I can do cool things and slicers and pivots and all kinds of cool things automatically and formatting automatically. But sometimes you go, no, I don't want it to be always as of current. I want to have the option to do historical. I want to be able to publish it so people can get it, in a browser. That's where SQL reports will come in. And you might go, you also could take that same data and put it into Power BI. So if you called Dexpro and you said, we have data in our external system, it stores our orders or sales transactions. We push the final information into GP, but there's these 4 fields we can't get in GP. Can you include them in Designer? What they would probably do is build a view for you that would include both sets of data. And then if you came back later and said, that's great, but we'd like to have it formatted with totals and filtered by this and do that, then the options could be a Power BI report or a SQL report But the good news is that SQL view is already done, and most likely with very little, if any changes, could just be the source for those other reports. And you've just paid one time to get that view instead of having in Designer or Builder tables, connections, and then you have to figure that out again and figure it out again. So definitely call when you get into reporting wackiness. I can't tell you how many times we'll talk to customers and we'll say, what do you do at month end? Oh, nothing big. And then they pull out these mega spreadsheets that are all based on one-time exports from SmartList, and it takes them 3 days to complete. And then we can go, let's take a step back. Can we make that a SQL report, or can it be a Power BI, or can it be if it has to be through SmartList, can we at least make it for you faster through Designer or Builder? Okay. There are automatically built-in SQL views from Microsoft. So you don't have to work with anybody, pay anybody extra. It's automatically there. So remember I talked about receivables transactions, and I would have had to connect the receivables open and the receivables work and the receivables history. And I can't do cross table connections in Designer. I can only do that in Builder. So now I'm stuck with 3 different reports. And in each of those reports, I have to connect the customer master and this, and this. Why not use a SQL view to do that? So let's take a look at the reason why once you see a SQL view, you probably will never go back for the most part to using just straight tables. So we're going to come in, like I said before, when I'm building a report in SmartList Designer, I click on a header name of a folder, and I'm going to hit new. And I'm going to call this AR transactions SLD. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to hit the views, which I scrolled all the way to the bottom, and plus for company. And I have to wait for just a second because this is the part that takes the longest. And once I do this report, I'm going to show you something. Actually, I'll start opening it now because we'll might as well kill my computer. I don't know if anybody had, my computer updated over the weekend and my phone updated, and it's just like, it's an update. I'm in update mode of resetting everything. So it's a little bit kooky on my life of dealing with computer updates. And I felt for everybody that has to go through an upgrade, I'm like, I get it. It's pretty tough. So let this finish. Now I'm running GP on my local machine in test. It's only the test company. It's not going to be anything confidential. So don't worry about that, but also know that that gives me that flexibility of not worrying about backups and things like that when I'm doing things. But one thing to note is that when you are working with creating a view in SmartList or in SQL, if you've written the view correctly, it's never ever going to update data. It's just going to create a fake virtual table. It's not an update script. I'll show you that. And if all you're hearing is like, this is tweet. I don't know what you're talking about. This is overwhelming. When I show you, it's a copy paste. If you still feel like that's beyond what you can do security wise or feel comfortable with, literally you just contact Dexpro, say, I want a SQL view that does this. They'll help you connect to your server, and they'll do it either after hours or work with you. And then you don't have to do it on your own. Don't stress about it. Okay. So I'm over here. I hit my little plus. What I want you to see is how these have friendly names. There's other views as well. I've never gone through and like, some of these are other views SmartList Builder or SmartList uses, but I haven't gone through and checked them all out. But what I can do is see how there's some friendly names in here. And if I said receivables transactions, and we'll go ahead and hit plus. Now, if I come in and I do a customer number, customer name, I didn't have to connect that table to get the name, document number, document type. Let's hit execute query just to test what we have so far. If I look at the screenshot, if you go back one, I'll show you. When I added the document, when I did just the straight table for receivables transaction or the open table, the document was a 1 or a 9. It was all kinds of numbers. That doesn't make sense to me. But when I go in and I use a SQL view, you'll see that it's now saying credit memo, sales invoice, payment. It'll say that. I want my document date, and I also want my GL posting date. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to look for GL posting date. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to do, keep looking. I want current amount, but I want original first. So we're going to come down and go original. And I want to put current. Hit execute. And now I've got my list. Now, if you went into here and you said, well, what's the point of doing that? That's basically the same as one I could have done in regular SmartList. That's true. But there may be fields in here that you don't normally see, or you may want to put a filter that no one can override. So I could come in here and say, current transaction amount is more than 0. And if I push that filter in and execute my query, then you'll see that that includes ones that are greater than 0. If I said is 0, when we hit execute, we go over, I could force that filter into the report. And if you only give someone security to that report, you take away their security from the other, you're forcing in. I've done ones before where I've said salesperson is equal to Jana. Salesperson is equal to Rosemary. Salesperson is equal to Nicole. We can put in whoever's the salesperson, and then that person may only have security to that one report, and they can't override it. Because if you're out on the outside, so right now I have current transaction amount is equal to 0. If I'm on the outside for this report, even if I go into my search, if I said, you know what, no, I want the ones that are not 0, it's going to search and it stops, because behind the scenes, I've forced the filter to only be ones that are 0. And so out here, if I try to override that, I cannot, unless I have security to go into SmartList Designer and take that filter and change that away. So that's why you would do a designer on one that's very similar to a basic regular SmartList. So just so you know, if I put a filter in there and I want to get rid of it, I can dump that out, delete. Okay. Now, if you wanted to create a formula, we can come in and you can create a calculated field, and you can do stuff like something like this, and we'll say here, and I can take original. Now, just so you know, anybody watching this or now or later, it takes guts to do a report or a report live. Whenever you do them live, things can go wrong. So I'm just going to do a quick function, and it's going to be arithmetic, and I'm going to say minus. Okay, so I added in my little minus. For some reason, the cursor always goes before it, so then I have to come back and then go here, and I'll say current. Okay, so then I'm going to say it's going to be a currency, and I'll say save. Oh, good. And then I can go. Okay, so now I've got my amount paid or received. I'm going to execute, and I messed something up. So this is why you have to be very careful. So we're going to take that out, and then I might be further down if I would have let it go in there. So anyway, so you can add calculated fields into there. I'm going to leave this one alone, but I just wanted you to see that I can do that based on an existing view. But one of the things that frustrates me is right now, if I look at this and I go, okay, let me look at this. Here's my credit memos, but they're all positive numbers. My payments are all positive numbers, and my invoices are all positive numbers. If that's ever frustrated you, we're going to talk about another way to get a SQL view in that's going to fix that. So let's do that. And we're going to do that based on I mentioned earlier Victoria Uden. So I'm going to go into Victoria Uden's website. And I'm going to go to SQL reports and receivables. Some of these trainings I end up doing all payables demos. Today, for some reason, I keep doing receivables. It works for both. But I'm going to come in here and say receivables, and we'll say, I like this one that says aging detail. And we're going to go ahead and do this. Now I know it says aging, but what I want to have it show is it's going to show my current amount in as a negative number. So we're going to see. Let's see if it does that. Yeah, so see, it's going to do an original amount and a current amount. So we'll go ahead and take this view and copy. And I'm going to throw this over here. Databases. Click on this, new query. And we're just going to create this quick view. Now, if it errors and says that I already have it, let's see. Okay, perfect. Some of them I've loaded before. So we went ahead and loaded that. Now we're going to go ahead and click on sales again to clear and hit new. Remember, I need to do that in Designer, otherwise I clog up the system with all those extra fields. Go down here and hit the plus and hit the plus by company. And while that's running, I'm going to knock through some slides. Okay. So there's built-in SQL views from Microsoft. There are also SQL views from Victoria Uden. You can pick whichever one you're wanting to use, click on it, or if you don't feel comfortable clicking it, literally just send a screenshot, circle on the screenshot, or say this is the one, or click on the actual view and send the URL of that view over to Dexpro, and your project manager, whoever will coordinate or support will coordinate someone loading that for you if you can't load it yourself. Literally, you just, you can, I have it online somewhere where you can download. If you need help with that, we have it available. Copy the lines of the SQL view, open SQL, click new query, paste the script. That's it. And then you just hit execute, and then it's going to be available. We're going to talk about making them live reports in a minute. So let's go ahead, go back to here into GP. And it's still thinking. See, this is why I said this is the part that's the slowest. It's like, it's very frustrating because you're ready to hit buttons and you have to wait for this thing to load. I want to look away because it's like a watch pot never boils. That plus sign is a pain, takes forever to load. So what this is going to do is it's going to include that new view that I just did. I'm going to go ahead and show you the columns that I select. For this one, I basically select all the columns in the order that it comes, but I may take out the ones that are to do with multi-currency because for this company, I don't really use multi-currency. So, and this one they do, but I don't in this demo. So let's go down here and we're going to see current receivables aging detail. If I hit this top checkbox, it's automatically going to mark all. And this one actually it doesn't have any negative, so that's fine. Now, if we were trying to do one just like the one we just did in receivables, I may take out the aging buckets and just make it end at unapplied amount. But I'm going to go ahead and leave that and click OK. Oh, I must enter a name. That'd be helpful. And we're going to say AR aging SLD, just so we know what it is. Now, remember, we got a lot of this data. We could take out the columns we don't care about. We've got a lot of this data in that other report. But why did I just do that SQL view? Why did I go to that effort? And that is because my payments are now negative. My credits are negative. My returns are negative. So you can see how now I can run a report that would include those as negatives. In Builder, you can do that without having to worry about a view. There's actually just a couple check boxes for that to work. But if you don't have Builder, this is a great way for you to get current information and show it as a negative. Now you notice up at the top of my screen, it says publish and it's lit up. If I'm clicked on something else, let's go back over here. It grays out that publish. That publish only clicks or kicks in when I am on a SmartList designer report based only on a view. And then what it's going to do is it's going to look if I have under administration, if I have, it's actually system, reporting tool setup under system setup, and I have my Excel enabled. Now you'll notice mine's going to my C drive. That's because I'm literally running it on my local computer. Normally it'll say // server name / GP/GP share. And then inside of that, and then the folder would be called Excel reports. So it'll be inside of a folder that's a shared folder on the server, not on your C drive. If you put it just on someone's C drive, no one else can get to it. We went ahead and did that. We hit deploy. If this is not deployed, when Marlene had mentioned that we do free system reviews through Dexpro, this is one of those things that we can see or help with. There's also things for SQL reports that I don't have enabled on this computer. I have it on my other computer. Those can also be something that we may see in the reviews. A lot of the reviews looking at server setup, but those are other things that if those are not enabled, those are things that you can put in a support case and get those fixed and implemented through Dexpro, because they're very, very handy to use. So I've got that deployed. Now I'm going to go ahead and publish. And if I hit publish, it just says Excel report published successfully. And I'm going to go over to my sales and take a look. We've got about 14 minutes left. I'm going to leave time for questions. I'm going to try to leave about 10 minutes or so for questions. So hopefully I'll knock out the rest of these. We'll see. If you don't have questions, I can talk. I could talk for 14 hours. I do all the time, but we'll make sure you guys have time to ask a couple questions. Okay, so now you can see there's the aging that I just did. If I click that, it's going to open up in Excel, and it's going to be a live feed. It is not going to be a historical report. There are ways to get historical agings through SQL reports much easier than it is to try to get them through this live Excel. So if you need a historical report, that's something that we would do through SQL reports. So now we can see here, I've got my live Excel. I can format, I can add formulas as in a separate column. I can run pivot tables. I can just real quick go insert pivot table and click OK. I would rename the table typically, but I might want to see document type. And I'm going to see unapplied amount. And that quickly, I've got my total AR, but I can see what's for credits, debits, and I can throw underneath here, maybe my customer name. I can do it that way. Or this is why it's a pivot table. I can pivot that one over and see it by customer, by the amounts, and do some formatting and things like that. If a new transaction got posted, I would just hit data refresh, and this would pull new data from GP. If the name got edited and I hit data refresh, I can come in and hit refresh, and I don't have to do a new export, which is why it's really handy. Okay. Let's knock through the rest of some of these slides. Users will not see data in these reports until it's granted via SQL. If we made this into a 4-hour class like we do with SmartList Builder, and if you want a longer class with Designer, we would talk more about SQL security, but just know it has to be granted in SQL. Only reports based on a SQL view can be published. If I take this same report and I went into here and I added an extra table, immediately it would disable that publish. I wouldn't be able to publish or republish an update with that change. So it has to be strictly on a view. There's ways to get around that of creating a view based on what you did, but that's a great time to contact Dexpro for them to help you optimize and make sure the SQL view is built to run fast and built to not duplicate records and all kinds of cool stuff. So definitely call if you don't have a view that you need and you want to have published. Okay. SmartList designer headaches. I'm going to knock through these in a minute or two. You can't reorder columns. You can't publish based on tables. You'd have to base it on just SQL views. And the tables don't store friendly names. Like you saw, only when I did views did I see that the receivables transaction was an invoice or payment or credit memo. Otherwise, it's going to be numbers. And that can be very complicated and confusing. These are some of the differences between builder and designer. I go into these and I actually show some of these in that link that I showed earlier on SmartList builder versus designer. I'm not going to read through all of these for you, but we do have those again in that other webinar that I did before. There is free training available for SmartList Designer. There is free training available through Dexpro. We're trying to do every month or two, every quarter, we're trying to do a 1-hour session similar to what we did today. I worked with Marlena and we came up with a really good list of things that are not being used by a lot of customers, so that we came up with this use what you've got series. But as we come up with other ideas, you'll see those come in. So definitely subscribe to the Dexpro newsletter. Check that out. And also go to Dexpro Dynamics and click on the GP training options. And you'll be able to see we've got Power BI training. We have GP training. And those trainings that the longer sessions, those are paid training, but they're much more cost effective than having to pay for, on-site custom, use one-on-one training. So it's a good middle ground if you're looking for additional information where you get that time for questions. So questions being said, I went 1 minute over time. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to see it in the chat. If you need to be unmuted, I can click ask to unmute as well. If you guys wanted to ask them out loud. So does anybody have any questions on SmartList Designer? I'll give you guys a minute or two. See if I see any pop up. If you don't, I can show you a couple extra things or go back through. Or we can end a minute or two early. We've only got about 8 more minutes anyway. So if you guys have any questions. Okay. Hopefully you saw that we can use it to get to data you can't easily get to. What table would you use to reconcile? Okay, this is a great question. Rosemary asked what table report would you use to reconcile AR. So Rosemary, are you talking about reconciling the general ledger to receivables? Because that's what I'm going to start with. But if you type something different, perfect. Okay. Rosemary asked a great question and one I've actually been using this last couple of weeks helping one of my customers. What I would use is, if I don't have it loaded already, I'm going to do it really quick. You get the benefit of seeing a very fast install, and it would be GP reports, receivable SQL code, and I would go to GL distributions. I would also use the reconcile to GL that's built into GP, the one that's built in under, I don't know if you know about this report, it's automatically part of GP. I would also use this reconcile to GL report that's part of GP. I would go to receivables. I would pick my receivables account and I would hit process. I would pick a place and we'll just go to desktop. I'm just going to save it there and hit process. I would do this as well because this will show you anything wacky. But what I would also do is I would come in. Okay, we'll let this pop up. I would also come in and take this report. And you just want to start from create and get down to the bottom where it says grant select. That's the last row. Copy it, go into here, and we'll say new query, and we'll paste. Okay. Then what I'm going to go ahead and hit execute. And I'll go back over into GP. So let's take a look first at this report that got created. Nothing wacky came up for my month, but one of the things that I've seen happen is that somebody may have hit, when you want to look in the general ledger and see if anything came from a different source document. So I do two sides. On the general ledger, I will look for any transactions where the series is not equal to sales. And so I go into GP and I'll go into a normal old SmartList, and I'll go into financial account transactions, and I'm going to go like this. I have some that I've added some extra columns that are helpful. So I've got the ID, name, and the doc number. I'm going to search, and I'm going to look for account number is 11000. Oops, I did that wrong. My other customer, I've literally been on 24 hours a day working on this one customer as a different structure. And I'm going to say the series is not equal to sales. And you can see here now we've got some that are coming from purchasing. Now those could be refunds, but I put 1100. I didn't mean to put 1100. I meant to put receivables, which is what account did I do? Okay, 1200. That's why. Back over here. Search. 1200. That's helpful. Okay, so you can see here somebody did a journal entry in to receivables, and if I'm off $1,200, that's what it's from. So you can kind of research it that way. I will also add the column for the source document. Usually I'll add that in there if it's something that does also work in receivables sometimes. So I'll add in I probably have that column in there, do I? Document. Okay. Usually I try to add the source document. I'm not sure. I've changed so many things in this thing. I probably put it in there. Okay. Oh yeah, there it is. I changed it to source. See, it says GJ. So I add that source document in there as well. That's the basic on the GL side. But what I've seen happen before is that someone on the sales side will have used the account on the wrong line or done something crazy. So what I will do is I'll say new, and we're going to go AR distribution, and we're going to hit plus. Now, while that's doing that long time plus, we've got a couple minutes. I would also recommend, if you haven't looked at this before, there also is the closer from Reporting Central. And they have a report that actually does a lot of what I'm doing in one report. It's an add-on for GP, but it will tell you why things are off, like it was not posted or it was used in the wrong, in the wrong way. So that's another option for reconciling. It is an additional purchase, but it's saved some customers I've worked with hours and hours and hours. I hit a button on that I wasn't supposed to. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if that's loaded, and then with our couple minutes we'll get this done. It's still thinking, and then we'll say, I believe in you, little computer. Come on. And we'll go ahead and get that loaded, and I'll show you what I'm looking for. Now, what that's going to have is it's going to have a column for the distribution type. So when you're doing a sales transactions or purchasing transaction, if you ever go to distributions, you'll see it'll say purchase, sales, payables, it'll have that type, and this will have that in there. So I'm letting this is the part that makes me cuckoo. Why it takes so dang long. Okay, it's so close. It's so close. I want it. Okay, there we go. Woohoo. Okay. So I'm going to come down to view and I'm going to say RMTRX distributions. I'm just going to mark all for time reasons. And I think there's included some other currencies, but we'll go ahead and click OK. And then what I normally do is I look for, you can see here, distribution type. And what I want to do is make sure there's none that are the receivables that are not equal to 1200. Or opposite, if someone's using receivables and they're not using 1200. So I come in here and I'll say account is equal to 1200 and distribution type is not equal to accounts receivable and vice versa. And then I find out if it was on the wrong line. So between the making sure there's no journal entries directly to AR and making sure there's no distributions to AR that are incorrect, I'm able to do the reconcile along with that reconcile to GL. So hopefully that gets you some information. Did that help at all, Rosemary? If you want to go ahead and type that in, I'm going to just make sure I do my little close. Perfect. Okay. So as I mentioned before, Dexpro does do free Microsoft Dynamics GP 1-hour trainings like we did today. If you want more information, subscribe to the newsletter. I've been writing tips and tricks for the newsletter. So make sure you subscribe to that. If you want more information or to schedule a free Microsoft Dynamics system review, contact Marlena Stark, and her phone number is 312-888-5050, and we can get that set up for you. Thank you guys so much for attending today or watching this recording later. Again, my name is Amber Bell. If you have any questions or comments, please contact Dexpro Dynamics and let us know. Have a great afternoon, and thank you. We'll see you next time.